Have you ever felt the gaze of heaven upon you, a gaze of infinite tenderness, as if the entire majesty of the divine was captured in the innocent eyes of a child? In a small church in the heart of Europe, a sacred image has captivated the hearts of millions for centuries, becoming one of Christendom's most cherished treasures. The Infant Jesus of Prague isn't merely a devotional sculpture, it's a living encounter with the mystery of the Incarnation, where divine omnipotence reveals itself in the fragility of childhood. Born amidst the mists of Czechia and strengthened through times of trial, this devotion has crossed borders and oceans, carrying comfort, hope, and countless miracles to those who turn to the divine infant with faith. Chapter 1. The Origins of a Sacred Image. The story of the Infant Jesus of Prague dates back to the dawn of the 16th century, shrouded in mystery and divine providence, traits that define truly heavenly works. According to the most widely accepted tradition, the image was sculpted in a Spanish monastery, possibly in Andalusia, where devout artisans worked the wood with expert hands, their hearts whispering silent prayers. The figure depicts the child Jesus at approximately 3 years old, dressed in a royal robe, holding an orb and cross in his left hand, while his right hand is raised in a gesture of blessing over all who approach him. The delicate features of the infant's face, the serene gaze that seems to penetrate the soul, and the majesty that emanates from the small figure reveal artistic genius placed in the service of faith. The sculpture stands approximately 47 centimeters tall, carved from wood, coated with a layer of wax that gives it an almost lifelike appearance. From its earliest days, this image awakened a special devotion in those who beheld it, as if the child Jesus himself desired to manifest in a unique way through this artistic representation. The technique used in its creation demonstrates not only artisanal mastery, but also a deep theological understanding. For every detail of the image proclaims fundamental truths of our faith, the kingship of Christ, his dominion over all creation, and the tenderness with which he approaches his creatures. The first documented accounts of the image place it in the possession of a noble Spanish family, who revered it as one of their most prized treasures and considered it the protector of their lineage. In those tumultuous times of European history, when religious wars tore the continent apart and the Protestant Reformation tested the faith of entire nations, this small image crossed the Pyrenees, bound for northern lands. Divine providence had traced an extraordinary path for this representation of the divine infant, a path that would lead it from the sunny fields of Andalusia to the misty hills of Czechia, where its glorious destiny awaited. The journey of the sacred image from Spain to the heart of Central Europe was not a matter of chance, but part of God's mysterious design for the salvation of souls. In an era when sacred objects were frequently destroyed or profaned by iconoclastic movements, the infant Jesus was preserved with reverent care, passing from hand to hand among Christian families who recognized in that small figure something more than a simple work of art. Each person who safeguarded the image experienced particular graces, protection in moments of danger, and a special closeness to the mystery of the Incarnation, which strengthened their spiritual lives. The arrival of the image in Czech lands coincided with a period of intense Catholic activity in the region as the Counter-Reformation sought to revive true faith in territories threatened by heresy. Prague, the city of 100 spires, would become the setting where this devotion would reach its highest splendor, transforming into a beacon of hope for millions of souls thirsting for heavenly comfort. The infant Jesus was about to begin his reign of love and mercy from that corner of the world, demonstrating that God chooses the small and the humble to manifest his infinite glory. Chapter 2. The Gift of Princess Pollyanna. In the year 1556, the image of the infant Jesus arrived in Prague as part of the dowry of Lady Mary Manrique de Lara, a noble Spanish lady who married Walter Pernstein. one of the most illustrious nobles of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Lady Mary brought with her not only her material riches, but also her profound Catholic devotion, rooted in the best traditions of Hispanic spirituality, and among her most valuable possessions was that small image that had accompanied her family for generations. In the Bohemian court, where various religious confessions coexisted and where the Catholic faith needed vibrant testimonies, the presence of this noble Spanish woman and her devotion to the infant Jesus acted as a seed of spiritual renewal. Lady Mary Manrique de Lara raised her daughter, Princess Poliana of Lobkowicz, in the tender and filial love for the infant Jesus, transmitting to her not only the material custody of the image, but also the rich heritage of faith that accompanied it. Poliana grew up contemplating that sacred figure, praying before it in moments of joy and tribulation, learning from her earliest childhood that in the infant Jesus are found the wisdom and power of God, manifested in humility and closeness. The young noblewoman developed a deep spiritual relationship with the image, considering it her most faithful companion on the path of life, her counselor in important decisions, and her refuge in the tempests that stirred her soul. When Poliana married William Rosenberg, she brought the precious image to her new home, continuing the family tradition of veneration to the divine infant. Years passed, and Poliana, now a widow and without direct descendants to whom to pass on that spiritual treasure, felt in her heart the divine inspiration to give the image to those who could honor it publicly and make it accessible to all the faithful in need of comfort. In 1628, Princess Poliana made the decision that would change the destiny of that devotion. She would donate the sacred image to the Discalced Carmelite Fathers who had recently established themselves in Prague following the reform of St. Teresa of Jesus and St. John of the Cross. The handing over of the image to the Discalced Carmelites took place in an intimate but solemn ceremony where Princess Poliana spoke words that history has preserved with veneration. "I give you what I cherish most in this world. Venerate the divine child, and you shall lack nothing." These words, spoken with the conviction of someone who has personally experienced the power and goodness of the infant Jesus of Prague, would echo as prophecy in the years to come, as the Discalced Carmelite Fathers and the entire city of Prague would experience the literal fulfillment of that promise. Princess Poliana knew from her own experience that devotion to the infant Jesus wasn't mere sentimental piety, but a real encounter with divine mercy, transforming impossible situations and opening paths where there seemed to be none. The Discalced Carmelite Fathers received the image with profound gratitude and placed it in a place of honor in the oratory of their monastery, where they began to celebrate Holy Mass before it and to pray their community prayers. From the very first moment, the presence of the infant Jesus of Prague in that sacred place seemed to attract special blessings. The religious experienced greater fervor in prayer. The faithful who visited the oratory felt comfort in their afflictions, and extraordinary favors, obtained through the intercession of the divine child, began to be reported. The seed planted by the generosity of Princess Poliana was germinating, preparing to bear abundant fruit that would nourish the faith of countless future generations. Chapter 3. Father Cyril and the Heavenly Vision. Among the Carmelite religious who lived in the Prague monastery stood out Father Cyril of the Mother of God, a priest of Luxembourg origin whose real name was Stephen Schroeder, who had embraced religious life with the characteristic fervor of the great mystics. Father Cyril possessed a soul especially disposed to heavenly things, combining profound humility with a life of intense prayer that kept him in continuous dialogue with the Lord. Since the image of the infant Jesus of Prague arrived at the monastery, this religious felt a particular attraction towards it, spending long hours in contemplation before that childlike face. that seemed to communicate divine secrets to him and filled his heart with ineffable consolation. One night, while Father Cyril was praying fervently before the sacred image, he experienced a vision that would mark the rest of his life and the future of all devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague. The religious saw how the figure of the child began to radiate a soft yet penetrating light that filled the entire oratory with celestial splendor, and he heard with inner clarity a sweet but firm voice that told him, "Have pity on me, and I will have pity on you. Give me my hands, and I will give you peace. The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." These words were indelibly engraved in Father Cyril's heart, who understood that he was not the only recipient of the message, but the entire Carmelite community, and through it, all of Christendom. Father Cyril shared the grace received with his brothers in community, although with the prudent discretion that characterizes true mystics who fear vainglory more than silence. The religious welcomed the story with simple faith and increased their devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague, beginning to spread among the faithful of Prague the invitation to honor the divine child with greater fervor. The words, "Have pity on me," resonated in the soul of those who meditated on them, revealing a profound mystery of the spiritual life. God, in his infinite mercy, makes himself needy of our love, asks for our correspondence, begs us not to leave him abandoned in our hearts and in our tabernacles. Father Cyril's vision was not an isolated episode, but the beginning of a continuous spiritual relationship between the religious and the infant Jesus of Prague, which manifested itself in various ways over the years. In times of difficulty for the community, Father Cyril turned to the sacred image and always obtained light to discern the right path, consolation in tribulations, and strength to persevere in religious life. This personal experience of the religious would become a living testimony of the power of intercession of the divine child, inspiring others to also cultivate that filial and trusting relationship with Jesus in his earthly childhood. The first years of the image in the Carmelite monastery were a time of peace and spiritual growth for the community and for all the devotees who began to come to the oratory to venerate the infant Jesus of Prague. However, that spring of graces would soon be tested by the storms of war and persecution, moments in which the divine promise communicated to Father Cyril would manifest its true scope. The faith of that humble Carmelite would be tested like gold in the crucible, but his unwavering trust in the words of the infant Jesus would sustain him even in the darkest hours that were looming. Chapter 4. Times of War and Abandonment. The year 1631 marked the beginning of one of the most painful periods in the history of the Carmelite monastery of Prague and of the devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague. The Swedish Protestant troops, in the context of the devastating 30 Years' War that was bleeding Europe, invaded Czechia with implacable ferocity, sowing destruction and terror everywhere. Prague, the city that had been a bastion of the Catholic faith, fell under the rule of those who considered sacred images as idols that should be destroyed. And the monasteries and convents became priority targets of looting and profanation. The discalced Carmelite fathers, warned of the imminent danger, had to flee their monastery hastily, taking with them only what was essential to survive. In the midst of the chaos and terror of those dark days, the image of the infant Jesus of Prague was abandoned in the oratory, where the invading troops burst in with sacrilegious violence. The soldiers, moved by religious hatred and greed, looted every object of value they found, destroying altars, profaning the tabernacle, and throwing to the ground whatever represented the Catholic faith. The sacred image of the infant Jesus which for years had been venerated with love and reverence, was treated with brutal contempt. The invaders tore off its small wooden hands, stripped the figure of its precious garments, and threw it among rubble and garbage, as if it were an object of no value whatsoever. For 7 long years, the image of the infant Jesus of Prague remained hidden among the rubble of the abandoned monastery, covered in dust and dirt, forgotten by everyone, except by him whom it represented. The Carmelite monastery was desolate, its walls cracked and its roofs partially collapsed, while the war continued to devastate the region without any hope of nearby peace. The religious, those who had survived the persecution, lived scattered and hidden, taking refuge in the homes of Catholic families who risked their own lives to protect them. They dreamed of the day they could return to their beloved monastery and restore the religious life that had been so brutally interrupted. Father Cyril, who had managed to escape death during the invasion, carried in his heart a constant sorrow for the forced abandonment of the image he loved so much. In his nightly prayers, as the weight of exile became almost unbearable, the priest begged the Lord to protect that sacred representation of his childhood and to allow its recovery someday. The memory of the words heard in the vision, "Have pity on me, and I will have pity on you," resonated in his soul with even greater intensity during those years of tribulation, sustaining him in the hope that God had not forgotten his promise, nor those who trusted in him. Those years of war and abandonment, though painful, were part of the mysterious plan of divine providence, which often allows suffering to prepare for even greater glories. The desecrated image of the infant Jesus of Prague, lying among rubble, with its little hands torn off, became a poignant symbol of Christ himself, abandoned in so many hearts, despised by sin, mutilated by human ingratitude. But just as Christ's death on the cross preceded the glory of his resurrection, so too would the abandonment of the infant Jesus of Prague precede his triumphant exaltation that would move the entire world. Chapter 5. The miraculous encounter of Father Cyril in the year 1637, when the Swedish troops finally withdrew from Prague and a precarious peace returned to the devastated city. The discalced Carmelite fathers undertook the painful return to their ruined monastery. The sight that greeted them upon arrival shattered their hearts. The collapsed roofs let in the rain, the altars had been destroyed, the walls blackened by fire bore witness to the iconoclastic fury, and everywhere there were signs of desecration and neglect. Among those returning religious walked Father Cyril, already old and stooped by years of suffering, but with a soul burning with the desire to find the image of the infant Jesus that he had been forced to abandon 7 years earlier. Moved by an inner inspiration that he recognized as the voice of the Holy Spirit, Father Cyril made his way to the rubble of the oratory, where the image had been venerated before the invasion. Removing stones and timbers with his trembling hands, digging through the accumulated dust and the remains of what had been a sacred place, the old priest searched with the unwavering faith of one who knows that God answers those who seek him with a sincere heart. Suddenly, among a pile of rubble covered in mold and cobwebs, his fingers touched something that made his heart leap. It was the image of the infant Jesus, dirty and damaged, but still recognizable. With tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, Father Cyril took the sacred image in his arms and gazed at it with a love mixed with sorrow. The child's face remained intact, with that serene gaze that seemed to understand and forgive all human suffering. But the little hands had been brutally torn off, and the wooden body showed cracks and damage caused by years of humidity and neglect. The priest pressed the battered figure to his chest, begging forgiveness for having left it alone for so long, even though the circumstances had made that painful abandonment inevitable. As Father Cyril held the image in his arms and prayed fervently before it, he experienced once again that supernatural presence that he had known years before in his first vision. The infant Jesus spoke again to his heart, with words that were etched in his memory forever. "Have pity on me, and I will have pity on you. Give me my hands, and I will give you peace. The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." The message was identical to the one received years earlier, but now it acquired an even deeper meaning. The physical restoration of the image would be a symbol of the spiritual restoration of the entire community and of all those who turned to the infant Jesus with filial trust. Father Cyril shared the miraculous discovery and the words received from heaven with his brothers in the community, urging them to fulfill as soon as possible the divine request to restore the image. However, the community faced a seemingly insurmountable difficulty. The extreme poverty in which the war had left them made it impossible to afford the repair of the image, as they barely had resources for their own daily survival. The elderly Father Cyril insisted, with unwavering faith, that they should trust in the infant Jesus' promise, but the material circumstances seemed to shout louder than the voice of supernatural hope. Chapter 6, "Have pity on me, and I will have pity on you." The words of the infant Jesus to Father Cyril contained a profound mystery that Christian piety has meditated on for centuries with reverent awe. "Have pity on me" resonates as a divine invitation to contemplate the Son of God in his voluntary humiliation, making himself small for love of us, dependent like any human child, in need of care and attention. In this heavenly plea, the very heart of the gospel is revealed. God who humbles himself to become vulnerable, who asks for our love instead of imposing it, who begs for our tenderness, even though he is the Almighty, who holds the entire universe in the palm of his hand. The request to "give me my hands" possessed both a literal and a symbolic meaning that Father Cyril understood with crystal clarity. Literally, the image needed its mutilated hands to be restored in order to recover its integrity and beauty. But symbolically, those hands of the infant Jesus represented his saving action in the world, his blessing that reaches all who invoke him, his generosity that pours out graces without measure upon those who come to him. Returning the hands to the infant Jesus meant allowing him to act freely again, letting him bless and help the needy souls who cried out for his assistance. The promise, "I will give you peace," resonated with particular force in those days following the devastation of the war, when Prague and all of Czechia yearned for peace, not only political, but also spiritual. The peace that Christ promises is not the superficial absence of external conflicts, but that deep serenity of the soul that remains even in the midst of tribulations, the unwavering trust in divine providence that transforms suffering into an occasion for holiness. The infant Jesus offered a peace that the world cannot give nor take away, a peace that is born from knowing you are loved by God and protected by his infinite mercy. "The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." This established a spiritual law, a correspondence between human devotion and divine generosity that has been proven countless times over the centuries. The Lord does not need our honors, but in his pedagogical wisdom, he establishes this reciprocity to educate us in gratitude and faithfulness, teaching us that every grace received should lead us to greater love, and every love manifested opens the floodgates of even more abundant blessings. The infant Jesus promised to shower unlimited favors on those who venerated him with sincere devotion and childlike trust. Father Cyril meditated on these words day and night, understanding that they were not a private message for his personal consolation, but a revelation destined for the universal church, a call to all Christians to rediscover devotion to the mystery of the Incarnation. Through loving contemplation of the infant Jesus, those words would become the theological and spiritual foundation of a devotion that would reach the ends of the earth, transforming countless lives and working wonders that would glorify the name of the Most High. Manifested in the smallness of divine childhood. Chapter 7. The Restoration and the First Graces. Despite the extreme poverty that afflicted the Carmelite community, Father Cyril did not cease in his efforts to see the image of the infant Jesus restored, according to the heavenly petition. The elderly religious went daily before the battered figure, renewing his supplication to the infant Jesus, so that he himself would provide the necessary means for its repair, trusting fully that he who had promised blessings would also fulfill this fundamental need. Father Cyril's faith remained as firm as an unshakable rock, while his brothers in the community wavered between hope and discouragement at the apparent impossibility of raising the necessary funds. Divine providence responded to Father Cyril's trust so clearly that no one could doubt the heavenly intervention. A nobleman from Czechia, whose name tradition has preserved as Jack Jeszek of Liban, experienced a sudden and inexplicable inspiration to visit the Carmelite convent precisely in those days of anguish. Upon learning of the situation of the image of the infant Jesus and the words he had communicated to Father Cyril, the nobleman was deeply moved and immediately offered to pay all the necessary expenses for the complete restoration of the sacred figure. This providential generosity confirmed the divine promise and demonstrated that the infant Jesus knows how to touch hearts and move wills to carry out his designs. An expert sculptor was hired to undertake the delicate task of restoring the image, a job he performed with extraordinary reverence and skill. The mutilated hands were replaced with new hands, carved with precision, scrupulously respecting the proportions and style of the original image. The cracks in the body were repaired masterfully. The layer of wax covering the wood was renewed, restoring its smoothness, and finally, the image was clad in new vestments, made of precious fabrics and delicate embroidery. When the work was completed and the infant Jesus was returned to the convent, his appearance was so beautiful and majestic that all who beheld him felt their hearts tremble with devotion. The restored image was placed on the altar of the convent oratory, with a solemnity that manifested the gratitude of the religious and their renewed confidence in the power of the divine child. From the very moment that the sacred figure again occupied its place of honor, the promised graces began to manifest themselves with an abundance that exceeded all human expectation. The discalced Carmelite fathers experienced a renewed spiritual fervor that transformed their community life. Alms and material aid began to arrive at the convent from unexpected sources, freeing the community from the extreme need that had overwhelmed it, and the faithful of Prague began to come in increasing numbers to venerate the infant Jesus, bringing with them their petitions and needs. The first miracles were not long in coming and were so evident that even skeptics had to recognize the hand of God working through that devotion. The terminally ill recovered their health after invoking the infant Jesus. Desperate family situations found solutions when they prayed before his image. Surprising conversions of hardened sinners occurred after visiting the Carmelite oratory, and unexpected material blessings came to those who had entrusted their temporal needs to the divine child. The city of Prague, which had suffered so much during the years of war, began to experience that peace promised by the infant Jesus, a peace that flowed like fresh water from the small oratory, where the divine child reigned with his gaze of infinite love. Chapter 8. The Royal Robes of the Divine Child. One of the most beautiful and distinctive characteristics of the devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague is the tradition of dressing the sacred image with different robes. according to the liturgical seasons of the ecclesiastical year. This custom, which may seem superficial to profane eyes, actually contains profound theological and pedagogical wisdom because it helps the faithful to live more intensely the mystery of Christ, celebrated in each season of the sacred calendar. The infant Jesus appears dressed in white on feasts of great joy, in red on the memorials of the martyrs, in green in ordinary time, in purple in penitential periods, thus participating visibly in the liturgical life of the Church. The first garments made for the image were donated by grateful devotees who had experienced special favors through the intercession of the infant Jesus. Noble ladies of Prague competed in generosity and artistry to offer ever more beautiful robes made with silks, brocades, and velvets, adorned with embroidery in gold and silver thread, set with pearls and precious stones that shone like stars. When the light of the candles illuminated the image during divine services, each dress became a materialized prayer, a tangible expression of the love and gratitude of hearts that had been touched by the merciful tenderness of the divine child. The crown that adorns the head of the infant Jesus deserves special mention, for it symbolizes his universal kingship as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, although manifested in the humility of childhood. This crown, richly decorated with gold and gems, was donated by pious benefactors who wished to honor the infant Jesus, recognizing him as the absolute sovereign of their lives and of all creation. The custom of crowning the infant Jesus is also related to messianic prophecy and the recognition that in that child of Bethlehem, all the promises of the Old Testament about the expected Messiah, who would come to reign eternally, were fulfilled. The orb and cross that the infant Jesus holds in his left hand constitutes another symbolic element of profound significance. This sphere represents the entire world, subjected to the lordship of Christ, who, although a small child, is the creator and sustainer of the universe, the Word by whom all things were made, and without whom nothing that has been created would exist. The cross that crowns the orb proclaims that the reign of Christ is established through the paschal mystery of his death and resurrection, reminding the devotees that the child adored in Bethlehem is the same Christ who would be crucified on Calvary for the salvation of the world. Throughout the centuries, illustrious personalities of European royalty and the ecclesiastical hierarchy have donated splendid vestments for the infant Jesus of Prague, turning his wardrobe into a true artistic and devotional treasure. Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, King Ferdinand of Spain, various popes and cardinals, along with innumerable anonymous faithful, have contributed with their offerings to adorn the divine infant, demonstrating that the love for Christ in his childhood transcends geographical and social borders, uniting in common devotion the powerful and the humble, the wise and the simple, all who recognize in that child the Savior of the world. Chapter 9. Miracles that span the centuries. The archives of the Carmelite convent in Prague preserve documented testimonies of thousands of miracles worked through the intercession of the infant Jesus from the 17th century to our days, forming an uninterrupted torrent of graces that confirms the divine promise, "The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." These heavenly favors encompass the entire range of human needs: physical healings inexplicable to medical science, deliverance from imminent dangers, spiritual conversions that transform entire lives, providential solutions to desperate economic problems, and family blessings that restore homes on the brink of destruction. Among the first miracles recorded, the case of a plague epidemic stands out, which threatened to devastate Prague in the year 1639. The city, barely recovering from the ravages of war, now faced the terror of the disease that had decimated entire populations in other regions of Europe. The discalced Carmelite fathers organized a procession with the image of the infant Jesus through the streets of Prague, inviting the people to join in fervent supplication for the liberation from the scourge. Inexplicably to the doctors of the time, the epidemic stopped abruptly after that procession, without claiming the massive victims that everyone feared. And the city attributed this mercy to the powerful intercession of the divine child. The healing of seriously ill people constitutes the type of miracle most frequently reported in connection with the infant Jesus of Prague. People given up by the doctors, dying children whose desperate mothers went to the Carmelite oratory to implore help, paralytics who recovered the movement of their limbs, blind people who regained their sight. All these cases, and many more, were carefully investigated and documented by the ecclesiastical authorities. A particularly moving case is that of a Bohemian boy who was born deaf and mute, and whose mother, with unwavering faith, took him daily before the image of the infant Jesus, begging for his healing. After a particularly fervent novena, the boy suddenly began to hear and speak, leaving all the witnesses astonished. The miracles of the infant Jesus are not limited to physical healings, but also include spiritual conversions that change the eternal course of souls. There are accounts of hardened sinners who, after contemplating the image of the divine child, felt their hardened hearts break like ice in the sun, bitterly wept for their sins, and returned to the path of virtue completely transformed. Marriages on the verge of divorce found reconciliation after praying together before the infant Jesus. Young people tempted by suicide discovered renewed reasons to live. Priests who had lost their initial fervor recovered the joy of their vocation. The devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague spread rapidly beyond the Czechia borders, reaching all of Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Africa, carrying with it the torrent of graces that flowed from that small image. In every corner of the world where this devotion was established, the same prodigies were repeated, confirming that the power of intercession of the infant Jesus knows no geographical or cultural limits. Carmelite missionaries, who carried replicas of the image to distant lands, reported mass conversions of pagans, miraculous protection against dangers from wild animals and tropical diseases, and the flourishing of fervent Christian communities where the divine infant was venerated with filial love. Chapter 10. The solemn coronation and the pontifical recognition. The extraordinary growth of devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague and the abundance of graces worked by his intercession drew the attention of the ecclesiastical authorities, who initiated rigorous investigations to verify the authenticity of the reported phenomena. Expert theologians examined the orthodoxy of the devotion, confirming that nothing in it contradicted Catholic doctrine, and that, on the contrary, it promoted fundamental truths of the faith, such as the mystery of the Incarnation and the real humanity of Christ. Canonical commissions interrogated witnesses of miracles, reviewed medical documentation, and concluded that numerous cases did not admit satisfactory natural explanation. In the year 1655, the Bishop of Prague officially granted his approval to the devotion to the infant Jesus and authorized the public worship of the sacred image, thus recognizing its legitimacy and encouraging the faithful to turn with confidence to the divine child in their needs. This episcopal recognition opened the doors for an even greater expansion of devotion, as it now carried the seal of approval of the ecclesial authority that guaranteed its conformity with the faith of the Church. The discalced Carmelite fathers, strengthened by this official support, intensified their efforts to spread the devotion through the distribution of prints, prayer booklets, and replicas of the image. The solemn coronation of the infant Jesus of Prague took place in a ceremony of extraordinary magnificence, held before thousands of the faithful, who packed the church and the surrounding streets. The officiating prelate placed a crown of gold and precious stones, especially crafted for the occasion, upon the head of the image, while the choir sang hymns of praise, and the people burst into joyful acclamations. This coronation wasn't merely ornamentation, but a public and solemn recognition of the universal kingship of Christ, a confession of faith that the child represented in the image is true God and true man, an eternal king whose kingdom shall have no end, the Holy See in Rome, informed by the bishops of Czechia about the flourishing devotion and the numerous miracles associated with it, also expressed its approval and blessing. Several popes granted special indulgences for those who visited the shrine of the infant Jesus of Prague or prayed the traditional prayers of this devotion, enriching the devotional practice with the Church's spiritual treasures. Pope Pius X, with his known tenderness towards the childhood of Jesus, particularly promoted this devotion as an excellent means to cultivate the spiritual childhood that Christ himself pointed out as a requirement to enter the kingdom of heaven. The official recognition of the Church elevated the Carmelite Oratory of Prague to the category of international shrine, a place of pilgrimage for Catholics from all over the world who wished to personally venerate the infant Jesus in his original home. Kings and commoners, scholars and the uneducated, the healthy and the sick, all converged for centuries towards that corner of Czechia, where the infant Jesus reigned from his small throne, dispensing graces without measure, and confirming with continuous miracles the promise he once communicated to Father Cyril: "The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." Chapter 11. The devotion that conquered the world. From its humble origins in a Carmelite convent in Prague, the devotion to the infant Jesus spread with astonishing speed, reaching the farthest corners of the earth, demonstrating that love for the divine child speaks a universal language, understandable to all hearts. Catholic missionaries, departing for faraway lands, carried with them replicas of the Prague image, making it a companion to their apostolic works, and a bridge of encounter between the gospel and diverse cultures. In the Philippines, in Mexico, in India, in countless countries of Africa and the Americas, the figure of the infant Jesus found a fervent welcome among peoples who recognized in him the loving closeness of God, the spirituality of spiritual childhood. So deeply linked to the devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague, found sublime expression in saints such as Saint Therese of the Child Jesus, who took her religious name, inspired precisely by this devotion, and taught the world her little way of filial trust and abandonment in the arms of the Heavenly Father. The little Carmelite of Lisieux understood that becoming like a child before God doesn't mean childishness, but a humble recognition of our total dependence on divine love, an attitude that frees the soul from the tyranny of pride and opens the floodgates of grace. Her spiritual doctrine resonated with the words of the infant Jesus of Prague: "Have pity on me," an invitation to mutual tenderness between God and the soul. In Spain and Latin America, the devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague took root with particular intensity, mixing with the rich Hispanic tradition of representations of the child Jesus and giving rise to moving popular expressions of faith. Entire families adopted the custom of enthroning an image of the infant Jesus in their homes, recognizing him as King and Lord of the family, invoking his protection over the home, and turning to him in all the joys and tribulations of domestic life. This practice transformed countless families, strengthening marital bonds, improving the Christian education of children, and turning homes into small domestic churches where love reigned. The 20th century, despite its political upheavals and the advance of atheistic materialism, witnessed a renewed flourishing of the devotion to the Infant Jesus of Prague. When communist Czechoslovakia tried to suppress public expressions of Catholic faith, the Prague faithful kept the devotion alive in secret, praying before hidden replicas of the Infant Jesus, in the secrecy of their homes, trusting that the divine promise of protection remained in effect. After the fall of communism in 1989, the shrine of the Infant Jesus experienced a glorious rebirth, with thousands of pilgrims flocking again in freedom to venerate the divine infant in the third Christian millennium, when humanity faces unprecedented challenges and many hearts suffer from loneliness and hopelessness amidst material abundance. The devotion to the Infant Jesus of Prague offers an oasis of tenderness and hope. Thousands of shrines dedicated to the Infant Jesus exist today on 5 continents. Millions of the faithful pray the traditional prayers daily. Countless testimonies of graces received continue to arrive from all corners of the world. The small image that was once rescued from the rubble by Father Cyril continues to reign from Prague, but its spiritual influence now embraces all of humanity, confirming generation after generation that Christ has not left his children orphans, but watches over them with a father's love, manifested in the sweetness of his divine childhood. Chapter 12. Prayer to the Infant Jesus of Prague. O sweetest Infant Jesus of Prague, whose tender gaze penetrates to the depths of our hearts and knows all our needs before our lips express them, I come humbly to your feet as a divine infant, seeking refuge in your infinite mercy. You who promised Father Cyril, have pity on me, and I will have pity on you. Show me how to respond worthily to the immense love you have for me, how to honor you as you deserve, how to serve you with the faithfulness that you expect from your devotees. Grant me the grace to see you, not only as a venerated image, but as a real presence of the incarnate Word, who continues to work wonders in favor of those who trust in him. Infant Jesus of Prague, you, who said, "Give me your hands, and I will give you peace." I beg you to extend over me your blessed hands, those that were restored after abandonment and desecration, those that sustain the entire world, while blessing every soul that approaches you with sincere faith. Give me the peace that the world cannot give or take away, that deep serenity that comes from knowing oneself loved by God and protected by his paternal providence. Calm the storms that rage within my heart. Dispel the shadows that darken my mind. Strengthen my will, weakened by sin, and let me experience that peace that surpasses all human understanding. Divine Infant Jesus of Prague, King of Kings, though small in stature, almighty, though represented in the fragility of childhood, I present to you now all my material and spiritual needs with the confidence of a child who knows that their father will never abandon them. Here one can make their personal request. You who promised, "The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." Increase my faith to grow in your honor, and my charity to spread your devotion among all who surround me. May your kingdom of love be established in my heart, in my family, in my community, until it reaches the ends of the earth. Holy Infant Jesus, who reigned in the manger of Bethlehem and reigns now gloriously in the heavens, I consecrate to you this day my entire life without reservation. Accept the humble offering of my heart, which needs you so much, of my soul, which longs to be transformed according to your image, of my whole being, which desires to belong entirely to you. Let me always live in an attitude of spiritual childhood, recognizing my smallness before your greatness, my poverty before your infinite wealth, my weakness before your omnipotence. Teach me to trust in you, as children trust in their parents, to love you with the purity with which you love me, to serve you with the joy that springs from knowing that I am a beloved child of the King of the universe. Amen. Glorious Infant Jesus of Prague, protector of those who invoke you, hope of the desperate, comfort of the afflicted, medicine of the sick, shelter of families, help of the poor, hear my prayer and let me experience in my life the fulfillment of your promise. To bless abundantly all who honor you with sincere devotion, may your holy name be glorified throughout the earth, and may your kingdom of love, justice, and peace be established definitively in the entire world through you, Infant Jesus, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.